once again.
UHF destruct on my mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark.
Good secondary.
Shogun 2 cleared to fire.
Shogun 2 cleared to fire.
Nomad 3 cleared to fire.
Nomad 3 cleared to fire.
30 seconds.
A little bit here. Oh, he's got the throw.
40 seconds.
Okay, 2, Fox 2.
Got it?
Fox. Fox. Hit it. Hit it.
5, Austin. Outstanding.
71, arm safe, knock it off.
Adler, confirm arm safe. Adler 4 is arm safe.
Angels 1, multiple contacts.
A fighter pilot is a very aggressive, mission and goal-oriented person. He's going to do whatever he has to do in order to accomplish his mission and his goal. And whatever way it's going to take him to get to it and accomplish his goal, he's going to figure out a way that he can get into his target, get his mission accomplished, destroy the target, and get his force back out alive without anybody getting injured or getting killed.
Air superiority, the principal mission of the air-to-air fighter, to deny the enemy access to the skies, to provide safe passage for the strikers and attackers. This is the role that falls to some of the most sophisticated aircraft in aviation, and the pilots that fly them.
The Air Force's mission is air supremacy, as we saw in Desert Storm, so the ability to own the skies and then take advantage of that to basically drive wherever you need to put bombs on targets is coupled with the ability to sweep the skies of enemy fighters and additionally use whatever assets you have to take away their capability to employ surface-to-air missiles, or if they do employ surface-to-air missiles, being able to defeat those.
You have to be pretty aggressive. I don't know of too many fighter pilots that are, laid back, unaggressive kind of people. Most of the people I know that are doing real well at flying fighters are very aggressive. They want to win every time they set out to do something. They want to be number one every time, and they'll do whatever they have to do to win. And I guess that it's a very aggressive kind of personality.
The air-to-air mission is much more intense. Getting geared up for an air-to-air hop, let's say a four-ship versus many or unknown out there, you've got a lot on your mind. There are so many things you need to do, and you're really on your toes the whole time. With a strike mission, everything's kind of laid out. You have a certain timeline you're on. You have a target. You know where you're going. You have a destination. You have some en route time there where you may not have to be as quite on your toes as you do in an air-to-air mission. Of course, depending upon the enemy threat.
The challenge of doing that, and the fact that it is fluid, it changes constantly, and you can never really completely predict what's going to happen out there, is one of the big draws of tactical aviation, to go in and meet the demands of that ever-changing fluid environment. And it's one of the reasons that most of the guys, as much as we love to fly low altitude and drop bombs, but most of the guys lean just for the sheer challenge of it. We prefer the air-to-air arena because you never can predict it. It's always fluid and changing. And you're right, it is almost like a dance. And timing is critical, and decision-making is critical, and it's one of the big draws of tactical aviation and why we all love it so much.
There's no time when you're really relax per se, but there's a lot of times you can sit back and say, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen now. I know what's going to happen next. I know what this guy is going to do if you're out there fighting some guy in a BFM engagement or a dogfight, and you know what's going to happen next, and you can predict it, you can see it. It's almost like I've been here before, but I didn't realize it then because I was so excited about what happened. I really didn't see what was going to happen. But now, since I've got all the experience now, that I see what's going to happen now, I know what's going to happen next, and I know what the outcome's going to be. It comes with experience.
With twin afterburning turbofan engines generating 46,000 pounds of thrust, with a top speed of 1,650 miles per hour, armed from wingtip to wingtip with advanced air-to-air missiles, the F-15E Eagle rules the skies as the world's preeminent air-to-air fighter.
Well, the F-15C again is primarily, in fact, now totally air-to-air. We don't have any other commitment besides air-to-air. You know, I've never dropped a bomb in my life, so you know, that pretty much tells you, you know, what our approach is.
Well, the F-15 has three primary roles that we look at. One is defensive counter-air missions where we're protecting some asset or area that we want to prevent fighters from going in. It's normally on the friendly side of the border. The second mission that we look at is offensive counter-air, where we actually are going into an area that's contested airspace or the enemy's airspace, and we're going in there to either disrupt his defenses or to shoot down something specific. The last one we look at is still in the offensive counter-air role, but it's tied to protecting strike aircraft, bombers, friendly bombers going across to find a target that they've been tasked to destroy.
He is the basic air-to-air F-15. There's A, B, C, D, and now there's the E. And the C model is kind of the latest version of the air-to-air F-15. That's probably the biggest change between the A and the C, is just the fact that you have a reprogrammable radar.
Normally the pre-flight starts at the ladder. I'll check the status of the gun underneath in between the two engines to make sure that the gun bay is properly loaded, and then I'll move outboard along the right wing, looking at the missiles, making sure that they're loaded properly and they're safed. And we have carts on the missiles, which actually push them away from, for the radar missiles, that push them away from the fuselage of the airplane before the rocket motor fires. I want to make sure that they're all, in fact, carted, because, you know, it would be nothing worse than to get in the air and shoot a missile and nothing happen because it doesn't come off the airplane. We were configured with two AIM-9s on the wing pylon with a external tank, 610-gallon tank. And then moving inboard to the fuselage, we had 4 radar guided missiles, AIM-7 Sparrows, 2 on each side, and then the external centerline tank. And so we had a total of 3 tanks, or about 23,000 pounds of fuel on board the aircraft, and then 8 air-to-air missiles, 4 radar and 4 heat-seeking missiles. During the takeoff roll, just prior to running up the engines, I'm looking at the weather, where I'm going to enter the weather, and what I need to think about as far as wingman consideration, especially if we're doing a formation takeoff. We'll run up the power, and I usually check it around 1,000 feet that I'm getting pretty close to 100 knots on the airplane for just a double check of proper thrust. Once I get to around 130 knots, I'm looking to rotate the airplane up to a takeoff position, and then I'm monitoring my wingman, scanning over him, cross-checking the runway and his spacing. Once we lift off, which is around 155 knots to 160 knots, then I'm looking to have at least 25 to 30 feet between us and the ground, and then getting the gear up, and then just trying to fly as smooth as possible for my wingman to have a good stable platform to fly formation off of. Once we continue on up through the weather, or if there's no weather at all, then I'll move him out to a more of a tactical formation, which allows us to visually scan for other aircraft and then start monitoring our radar systems. The airplane is cleaned off with no pylons and no armament. You can get airborne at 800 feet and climb completely vertical, well out of sight from the person on the ground.
Complementing the F-15 are three of the world's most respected fighter aircraft. The small but agile F-16 Falcon, the venerable F-14 Tomcat, the dual-role FA-18 Hornet.
The F-18 was basically designed to be a high subsonic or transonic airplane, so its supersonic capability is not like the F-15s or the F-14s. But we can get to about Mach 1.3 or 1.4 easily, although we spend most of our time flying at about 0.95 or so.
Well, the F-18 is the follow-on aircraft to the A-7 Corsair. The big advantages that we had putting the F-18 into service were now you have the air-to-air capability that the A-7 Corsair did not have. It has much better platform for bombing. You know, it's a state-of-the-art cockpit, computerized bombing solutions and all that. So it's just a lot better technology. Plus, it has the dual role. So that's basically it. The F-14's been around for a long time, and they would keep that in an air-to-air role because they were built around the AUG-9 radar and that Phoenix missile system and everything that they take a lot of pride in.
The mission of the F-14 is it's the Navy's premier fighter. At this time and in the future, it will become involved as a strike fighter. But primarily, it's a fighter first and provides air superiority and fleet air defense for the carrier battle group. Well, the F-16, it looks like it is built to maneuver in the sky. So that's a number one thing right there. Additionally, with the way that the avionics is coupled, the pilot is sitting slanted back at a 15-degree angle and with some good capability, hands-on to operate the radar with an excellent radar. All around, it's a really sweet airplane in the air-to-air role.
The F-16 is a super aircraft. First of all, its performance and its turning capability and its weapons delivery capability are still unmatched by any other aircraft in the world. The aircraft is relatively easy to fly, and by that I mean take off and land, and it's a fairly forgiving airplane with its fly-by-wire flight control system. It is a difficult aircraft to employ in combat. Being a single-seat, single-cockpit aircraft, the pilot has to do everything. He has to keep up with the navigation, the threats, do all the switchology, take the appropriate action all the time. And so the F-16 is a pretty demanding airplane to employ well in combat. That's why we practice all the time.
Being a Viper driver, I would say the F-16. Then my Eagle buddies across the hall would probably have to agree that they are number one. But I would say that definitely the F-16, F-15 combination is an excellent air-to-air capability. As far as the Navy goes, well, given the scenario, there's different capabilities with F-14 and F-18 combination. Of course, once the F-22 comes online, that will be the number one air superiority fighter.
With closure speeds in excess of Mach 2, decisions must be made in milliseconds. Friend or foe, range to target, evasive maneuver or launch missiles. This is air-to-air combat, a deadly three-dimensional game of hide-and-seek that demands the very most of pilot and aircraft.
In learning to fly the jet, the first thing you do is go out and you will practice one versus one maneuvering, perfecting the art of offensive, defensive, and high aspect, or what you might consider neutral maneuvering. And that is the basis of initially learning how to fly the jet, and it's probably the most demanding phase of flying.
We teach a guy to do is maneuver in relationship to another airplane. and which is called basic fighter maneuvers. And during a BFM, basic fighter maneuver engagement, you will do a number of things: rolls and pitch to slice, over the top loop kind of maneuvers, split S's, all kinds of things like that. We don't name them those. We pretty much, like I said, talk in relationship to another airplane.
In close, you're going to have what's called the free and engaged rolls as far as fighters go. You're going to have one guy that's pressing the bogey or tying him up, and then the other guy needs to get out of dodge, get at a certain point that he can get weapon separation and come back and shoot him while you've got him tied up. So it's definitely you're not staying in what we call it in phase or in plane with the other guy.
Dead. Bear is dead.
On a BFM sortie, just about 4 or 5 times a sortie, you'll pull at least 8 Gs. If you're not, you're gonna get your butt kicked.
Okay.
The most maneuverable air-to-air missile is the AIM-9, either Lima or Mike, and it is a heat-seeking missile. It will turn very tightly, and it's actually going after the enemy aircraft's heat source. It looks in a certain micron band for the infrared energy, and it will track that source, and it has very good close-in dogfighting capabilities. Since the missile head has an infrared seeker in it, it does not need information from the aircraft's radar. All it has to do is see the heat source and go after it.
Hit it. Hit it. 5, I see.
You don't have to be pointed directly at it. The missile does have a little bit of the ability to kind of turn its head. It can actually turn its little seeker inside the nose cone of the missile and see what we call off-bore sight. And that gives us the ability to use that missile in a dogfighting turning environment so that we don't necessarily have to be pointed directly at the adversary.
Now that the Air Force has AIM-120s or the AMRAAM missile on board, that is the first weapon of choice for us. We would look to use that at longest range capable, and given early clearance to fire or determination that the contact that we were on was a hostile aircraft, then we would elect to shoot that missile early on. It gives the Air Force launch and leave capability, so we may not ever have to get into visual range. However, you can shoot that and continue on to the merge. The next weapon of choice would be the AIM-7 Sparrow. It is also a radar-guided missile, and that is a beyond visual range missile. It does not have the same capabilities as the AIM-120. It's not as advanced missile. However, it is still a very good missile with an excellent track record. Once we got into a visual on the adversary, the AIM-9, which is a heat-seeking missile, the Sidewinder would be the weapon of choice. And then if we close down into the traditional gunfight or air combat that you would think of from old World War II days or World War I days, then you would see us switching to the M61 20-millimeter cannon that's on the aircraft. The ranges that we train day to day affords a 30 to 50 mile setup between us and the adversaries, and normally the engagement will occur in less than 2 minutes from 50 miles out, because you have closure rates of well over 20 miles a minute between the two aircraft. When things happen pretty fast, and once you get a visual on the other aircraft, you would either in a normal engagement see him blow up just about the time you'd see him, or be well into a fight within a good 20 or 30 seconds from that point. So passing him close aboard.
Barry Cutie, you still up? That's fine. Visual bear, you got the lead. Okay, got it.
Purge is the area where the engagement is sighted. Usually what that boils down to is visual merge. That's where people or aircraft start blowing up, and
you either find out whether your missile missed or hit him. And getting into that merge, hopefully we get there with an advantage because our radar missile has blown up one of the other adversaries and is disrupting them to the point that now psychologically they're having to play catch up, and we're going to enter with a complete offensive advantage.
As soon as I have assessed that through line of sight, or what I see out the window from your airplane, I see you moving across the sky. There's no way you can maintain a position behind me. I will reverse. I'll put my lift vector on, which means I'll put the top of my airplane on your airplane. I'll employ my radar in a visual combat mode to lock you up as quickly as possible. Once I've attained that, and I don't necessarily need to have you locked up to employ an infrared missile, but I'll use that to gain my quickest off the rail via an infrared missile. And once I've got you locked up, I can assess what your energy state is, whether you're within the weapons envelope of the missiles I have on board, and following that, I can, through a slaved missile, assess an IR signature. If I've got a good IR signature from my infrared missile, I'll go ahead and let that baby rip, and it should do most of the work for me.
Box. Box, box. Eagle, confirm good secondary.
Good secondary. Adler, confirm arm safe.
Adler 4 is arm safe. Sentinel aircraft in Sentinel area, restricted area 2905 Alpha and Bravo, Cole, resume normal traffic, Sentinel Tower out.
No matter how good the missile systems get, and no matter how good the radar systems get, especially with some of the stealth technology coming out, there are going to be guys in the visual arena that you're going to have to dogfight sooner or later. And if you don't have a highly maneuverable airplane to do it, you're probably going to lose. The only way to defeat an airborne threat is to have sight of it. The indicators in our cockpit are not accurate enough to tell us exactly where it's coming from. So for us to defeat with a high probability of winning is by maintaining the visual on that missile.
If you are hit by an infrared missile, there is a good chance that you will survive. However, you probably are out of the fight for that day, which means as far as that enemy aircraft is concerned, you are not a factor to him. Additionally, you may not have the capability to maneuver defensively as required. But for the most part, even if the jet's flying, you're probably not going to put your bombs on a target or continue the aerial engagement that you're in. We'll typically employ by elements in a four-ship formation, which means two sets of two, where you will use that line abreast formation to clear each other 6 o'clock and aid in either a 2v1 engagement or a 2v2 engagement to maximize our geometry at the merge.
You basically start with your ability to maneuver your airplane against another airplane, and then you'll work into a point where you'll work in tandem with another airplane versus another force of either equal or greater size, so that eventually, as you grow in the airplane and you've had a couple of years under your belt, you're up into four-ship employment where you're flying 4 F-15s versus another force, and that force can vary in size anywhere between 4 and an X number, 12 or better. So we typically in bigger scenarios where you're flying a four-ship, you may be facing 12 or better adversary aircraft. We really stress four-ship so that we kind of see that as our primary fighting unit as a four-ship.
Yeah, a little closer. The leader is primarily concerned with the tactical execution of the mission. He briefs the mission. He knows where the target is. He knows how he develops the type of tactic that you're going to use in order to get into the target or how you're going to go about attacking an enemy formation if that's your mission for that day. He knows and leads the other members of the flight into the target area and designs the type of tactic that's going to be used, the type of attack that's going to be used for that particular target, and how you're going to get back out of the target area safely. And the wingman and other members of the flight have various duties. They might back up the leader on navigation to make sure that we're going to the right area or that we're flying the proper route that we want to fly. He backs him up as far as threat lookout goes, looking for SAMs or AAA or enemy aircraft. He helps him out on the radio if needed by monitoring another frequency. You have to learn how to work as part of the team, even though you're in your own airplane and in your own cockpit where there's nobody else there but you, yet you have to integrate the whole operation of your package or everybody that's in your group as part of the team to go out and accomplish your goal. You don't want to leave anything open. You want to make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing every step along the way. And sometimes certain parts of the mission can go basically unsaid because everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing.
No matter how sophisticated your sensors are, your equipment, radars, warning, whatever systems you're using to detect what other aircraft or airborne contacts may be in the vicinity or you're prosecuting, there's always the unknown that you may have one, there may be more, there may be other people you don't know about that you're not detecting, so the old eyeball is probably the best thing, so you're always looking out visually to see what's around you.
Actually, I was leading a 4-ship up to the east side of Baghdad where we were set up a combat air patrol. We were rotating 2 ships back and forth, the 2 ships manning the combat air patrol, and the other 2 ships on the tanker refueling, air-to-air refueling. We were going back and forth, and during one of those cycles, while I happened to be on the tanker, my wingmen were manning the cap east of Baghdad, and the AWACS controller called him and told him that he had some hits, unknown bogeys, north of Baghdad, eastbound. My number 3 and number 4 man snapped in that direction, got their radar on them, did an excellent job of running the intercept and caught them. They appeared to be running for Iran, and I got them just short of the Iranian border and had the engagement there, and they went 4-0.
We did what we're trained to do, went in and take a look with the radar, sanitized, make sure there aren't any other factor bandits that we have to be concerned about. We both did our job, sanitizing the area, sorted with the radar, picked out our bandits and rolled in behind them. Was pretty much like clockwork.
It worked the way it was supposed to. Jet worked great, missiles worked great, and got in and out of there, no problems. Feels real good to be back home.
The Iraqis, we knew were good at flying at very, very low altitude. And at very low altitude, we're saying well below 100 feet. And that's the case when these guys were detected. They were detected several miles away, ran on them, and the intercept was concluded at very low altitude. In fact, one of the pilots noted that the MiG aircraft were, in fact, kicking up dust. They were flying at such low altitude.
We had a push time of about 3:15 local. Went up north at about 3:50. We were on target in southeast Baghdad. AWACS also is a big hand in all this. They were the big CCC command and control of everything. They were telling us exactly what was going on, what airplanes were looking at us, coming at us, and the numbers. It really worked out well. AWACS did an extremely good job. As we go up north, we hit our target area, our cap point. We started capping for them. There was really no air-to-air threats up at the time, just a few intermittent hits, and then they were probably either landing right back away, trying to hide, or trying to go to dispersal bases if they could find them. Once we got up into the cap area, we needed to clear out an airfield in southeast Baghdad for F-111s doing a big strike on there, and wild weasels were also the big important reasons to get the SAMs knocked down. We get up there at about 3:50, like I said. We started a engagement. I got the contact that AWACS calls out as a hostile chasing my number 3 man, and at about the same time I'm turning back around towards the east. When I turn back around there, I get a contact on a contact that isn't squawking our IFF, so when I lock this guy up, I can tell that he's not a friendly airplane. Come to find out that it's an F1. He's at about 8,000 feet headed west towards Baghdad, towards my number 3 and 4 men also. And we EID him as hostile. About 12 miles, I take a Fox 1, a radar missile. Everything's looking good. Thinking about taking another Fox 1, but no kind of interference or anything like that, so I just let one Fox 1 go. And about 4 miles in front of me, get a huge fireball. Actually get the missile coming off, which is a big flash coming off. Get a huge fireball, and the airplane blows up. When the airplane blows in a big, huge fireball, pieces get scattered everywhere. My number 2 man and I, we turn back south to get away from that initially. We come back up and trying to find, hopefully he has a wingman or something else. Actually, hopefully not, but we're looking for his wingman up there. See if he has anyone else coming up with them. We can't really find anyone else. AWACS is calling the picture clean. Actually, no Iraqi threats airborne at that time anymore. We continue to sweep and cap until all the wild weasels, all the EF-111s and the F-111s, F-15s are out of the strike area. Once they're out of the strike area, then we egress also.
The intercept, identifying the threat, preparing for the engagement, but always an exercise in geometry and a test of wills.
There's several different ways to intercept other aircraft, vertical conversions or an offset laterally. And what a baseline intercept is that, first of all, a lateral with some altitude displacement maneuver to allow you turning room to convert to that guy's 6 o'clock. If he allows you to do that, it's pretty simple, and you roll out behind him, and like I said before, you'll schwack him with whatever you got on board. My ideal intercept geometry would be an unobserved entry on Bandit, and we have something that is probably stemmed from the red flag type scenario where you have clear air mass and a huge altitude delta. You're allowed what would be called either a Schwuppenhausen or a Stuka maneuver, where you come from a high altitude, you're able to acquire this guy at low altitude, and then you maintain your high altitude to a pure vertical conversion in a worst case position for this guy to find you, which means not only are you coming down from a horrendous altitude above him, but additionally you're needle nosing him as you do a vertical conversion. He's got to look straight up behind him. His radar warning receiver indications aren't the best for that type of conversion, and he'll have a hard time assessing where you're at and being able to react to you without a visual. Given an ID scenario, I would need to positively ID that aircraft prior to being able to splash him. Additionally, I'd have to have clearance to do so. So with the capability that I have, I would have to convert to a visual position unless I was told otherwise, and identify him as, first of all, a hostile aircraft, and then additionally, I would have to be cleared to do anything to this guy, which means he would have to either be have hostile intent in regards to what he's doing, or we may just want to go ahead and tail him and let him know that we're there, let him know that we know that he might be flying through this piece of sky and that he doesn't have free reign in the skies.
Okay, bogies appear to be coming, jinking to the right now, heading north. Speed 430, Angels 5,000 now in the descent. Bogies appear to be heading directly at us. I'm coming port, steady up 150 for 30-degree offset, 50 miles. Bogies have jinked back into us now. Let's come starboard 30 degrees the other side.
Close out, warning yellow, weapons hold. I repeat, warning yellow, weapons hold. Alpha Bravo out. Roger, okay. Gypsies, pass up Bravo directs, warning yellow, weapons hold.
35 miles here.
Roger that. Bogies have jinked back into me now for the third time with noses on at 35 miles. Angel 7. Bogies jinked back into me for the fourth time. I'm coming back starboard. Come back port now. Port, 27 miles. Bogies at 7,000 feet.
Port 5. What's up, bogies 13550, Angel 16. Heading 340.
Okay.
Roger, same bogies.
You're in collision now. Steering.
Okay, bogies have jinked back at me again for the fifth time. They're on my nose now. Inside of 20 miles. Master arm on, master arm on. See, good light. Good light. Okay, centering up the T. Bogey is jinked back into me again. 16 miles, center the dot. Say your angels. I'm at Angels 5, nose up. Oh, his angels.
No, wait a minute.
Angels are at 9.
Alpha Bravo from 207.
13 miles. Fox 1, Fox 1.
Oh, Jesus.
Beacon right. Roger that. 10 miles, he's back on my nose. Fox 1 again.
Watching him up.
6 miles, 6 miles. Tally 2, tally 2. Turning into me. Roger that. 5 miles. 4 miles.
Okay, he's got a missile off.
Breaking right.
Good hit on one.
Roger that. Good kill, good kill.
I've got the other one. Short Fox 2, short Fox 2. That's Fox 2.
Coming hard, stop.
So, shoot him. I haven't got a tone.
Got the second one.
I got the second one on the nose right now.
Hey, I'm high cover on you.
Get it, lock him up. Lock him up. Bam, shoot him, Fox 2. I can't, I don't have a stone. So what? Good kill, good kill.
Hey, good kill.
No matter what mission they fly, fighter pilots talk as much about situational awareness as they do their aircraft. Combining information from onboard radar, AWACS, and their own scan outside the cockpit, the pilot builds and maintains his awareness of the threats around him.
The radar we have is one of the best around, and it's the, everyone, all pilots talk about SA, it's situational awareness, and it provides the most SA of anything. We have as much SA as anybody could have flying out there. We can search all the way out to 160 miles, and you know in advance what's coming at you or what's out there, and that really gives you all the SA you need and could ask for.
Well, first of all, if I don't have any situational awareness of where the threat is, what I'd like to do would be to basically sanitize some airspace with my radar, and then be able to get further information from GCI or AWACS so that I know basically the threat direction. If I know the threat direction, then I can sanitize with my radar to find the threat. If the threat's outside my radar coverage, around the side or to the stern where I'm feeling defensive, then I'll use one of my auto radar modes to sanitize out in front of me and pretty much go eyes out to try to find the threat before he can become a factor to me. If I'm low altitude and he's low also, he's probably not going to have a whole lot of SA on me either. So it's pretty much an eyes out situation again, where I'll have my radar working for me out front, but I'll be spending a lot of time looking outside. I pick up the guy, then I have to assess, is he a threat to me, or am I offensive on him? Who's driving the fight? If he's showing up behind me where I'm worried about being shot at, then I'll react defensively. If I pick him up first and I'm able to point at him, that's really all I really need to do is be able to point at him, and I can employ ordnance.
One of the things about the F-16 was that I knew flying around, and I'm sitting in about the smallest fighter, the smallest air-to-air fighter we've got in the U.S. Air Force inventory, and one of the smallest in the world's inventory. I always felt just a little bit smaller, and felt like it was a little bit harder for everybody else to see me. And we do, as pilots, believe in the big sky theory. In fact, a lot of us, after the Desert Storm believe in the big sky maxim now. We hopefully can fly around and avoid being hit by any aircraft and avoid being hit by other airplanes just because it's a big sky and we're a small jet. It's kind of an enveloping feeling. There's so much sky out there, and you know that little F-16 is such a small jet, and you can fly around and in many cases feel like you can get in much closer to the bad guy and see him before he can see you.
The capability to get down to low altitude into the radar clutter background is less and less. It's still a viable tactic to get down there, but I think it's not like it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago where the enemy had no capability to see you at low altitude. Now that capability is increasing across the board for everybody. Low altitude operations, look down, shoot down for the F-15, finding people down there, we can do that, and we can shoot them down very easily.
We'll get set up for the pitch.
Well, first of all, even today, you know, we've become data processors as much as aviators. You know, flying has to be a secondary skill almost. I mean, it has to be a natural skill. If you have to mentally think about actually controlling and flying the aircraft today, you will be behind the game so much that you won't hardly be able to catch up. And so the pilot is going to have to be an information processor. He's going to have a very good grasp of the systems that are available on his aircraft and all the data that he can gather, and he's going to have to be able to make very rapid decisions in the air.
Given that you had to eject at high altitude, the ejection system that we have in our fighters of this generation are pretty advanced, and they will take you through a profile that will allow you to maximize survival through a free fall profile to a given altitude and then deployment of the chute. And that'll also help you out in regards to extreme cold and lack of oxygen.
I pushed in on a small field called Medesis, and that's a forward deployed field that the Iraqis used, and picked up 3 F-1s that took off pretty much on my nose for about 25 miles out of that field, and they basically turned right into me and shot the leader with an AIM-7 and splashed him at about 4 miles from me, and then the second guy in line crashed at low altitude trying to avoid us, and the third guy ran, and we got in a tail chase with him. Our guess is he panicked, and again he was at probably less than 1,500 feet AGL, and it appears that he broke right when he saw his leader blow up. He broke right, and because he's so low that he hit the ground, and he hits the ground out in front of my nose, and you can see the cartwheel across the ground as he tumbles. The airplane's exploding, and there's fire everywhere. They had just been scrambled off a strip alert, I'm sure, had just gotten airborne. They were airborne less than a minute before the first one died. So, their adrenaline's up. They don't have their radars on. They're trying to figure out where they are. They may or may not even be strapped in totally, coming off alert. So, their SA was basically zero.
If I could do anything that I wanted, well, the first thing I'd probably do is I'd take off. I'd wait for a really nice, beautiful day. I'd take off, and I'd fly down over some F-18 base or some F-15 base, and I'd go up on their squadron frequency, and I'd tell them that anybody who wants to have some BFM or ACT academics to meet me over the field in 10 minutes. And then we'd see if we could get a big fight started right there over their field.
We pick at each other quite a bit. Even in the fighter community, if a guy that flies an airplane that has 2 engines, we tell him he ought to be in military airlift command because he's got so many engines, They pick at us a little bit about being real small, our airplane being real little. But we pick at them about all the engines they have, and we really pick hard at the guys that have 2 people in their cockpit, because we're kind of in there by ourselves, and it takes 2 of them to do what we do by ourselves.
flying part of it is really pretty secondary. It's, I guess, you're just trying to figure out how to get to a target or how to find, you know, the enemy aircraft and get in there and get what you have to do accomplished and get back out alive.
Higher, faster, more powerful, with near invisibility. Airframes, engines, missiles, radars, and pilots push the envelope, continuing to press for the advantages that will ensure ownership of the skies.
Bulldog, picture clean.
Gulf 1, 13-2, 22-8, feeding normal.